Owning a Bored Ape is more than just a JPEG of an ape. It's actually a membership pass to this club. They do events. There's a very active community built around it. One of the critical reasons why the Bored Ape project took off was that they actually offer commercial rights to their holders. So with my ape, I could go print merch of him. I could sign a licensing deal with his IP, and I actually could see the financial benefit from that. Community is powerful. The fact that I owned a Bored Ape meant that I could then go to Ape Fest during NFT NYC, which was a big festival. I actually DJ'd there, so
you already had access.
I was already in. Yeah, I was already in. But I can guarantee you, I was the least impressive name on the roster. Like the Strokes played it, Lil Baby played it, Beck played it, Aziz Ansari was there.
Welcome back to Making Bread, where we talk about all the new ways to make money using the technology of 2022. I'm your host, NFL quarterback Matt Barkley. Over the last 6 months or so, you probably started hearing the term NFT a whole lot. And if you're anything like me, you've probably had a lot of questions about them. Joining me today to discuss the future of NFTs and the metaverse is a world-renowned DJ and record producer turned NFT guru, Matt Medved. Matt is the co-founder and CEO of NFT Now, a media company focused on NFT coverage and curation. We're going to explore the relationship between NFTs, their celebrity owners, and much more, and I am pumped to dive into this. Matt, thanks for jumping on the pod. How we doing, man?
Doing great, man. Glad to be joined. Let's go. I'm here for it.
This is awesome.
I'm excited. This is my favorite thing. I'm talking about NFTs with fellow Matts. You know, how much better can it be?
And if I remember correctly, are you a Bills fan? Did we first connect because of that?
Yes. I think so. I grew up Rochester, New York, so been a
go.
Bills fan my whole life. Love to see you back in the fold, you know, and yeah, I mean, go Bills. Let's go.
That's right. Bills Mafia representing on this podcast, 100%. NFTs, Web3, DJs. I have a little DJ experience in my background, unbeknownst to probably everybody. But
wow,
I used
to mix.
In
common.
I think we have a lot in common, and this is gonna be a fun chat. I want to hear a lot about what you're doing, but before we do, we're gonna get into a little section that we call whale watching to talk about headlines in the space and what's going on. Maybe some things you've heard of, maybe you haven't, but let's dive right in. Yuga Labs, the parent company of Bored Ape Yacht Club, launched a new metaverse project called The Other Side, which I'm sure you were following this last week. It sold 55,000 plots of digital land for an equivalent of $320 million. It's the largest mint of an NFT project to date. So Matt, I know you're really into all things NFTs, but I got to ask, were you involved in this? Did you buy any plots of land on this project?
So I didn't buy any, but because I own a Bored Ape and I own a mutant ape, I was able to mint. I was able to claim 2 plots of land. So
even better.
You probably saw there was a crazy gas war around the actual mint. So I sat that out and then woke up leisurely on Sunday morning and minted a couple pieces. But it looked pretty wild. Yeah,
I think I saw there were north of $170 million in gas fees spent on just that project alone, which is bananas, no pun intended, but well done. You got your land and you're cruising.
Got my land.
I love it.
Yeah. But I would have liked to see some better drop mechanics in place to prevent all that waste, in terms of gas fees. So.
That was a waste. In other news, the S&P 500 is off to its worst start to a year since 1939. The 83-year low is naturally accompanied by a good amount of panic. So are you high or low, or what's your thought process on the traditional stock market at all? Do you have a panic level 1 to 10 at all?
Man, it's hard for me to really get panicked about the traditional stock market just because I'm so used to the volatility of the NFT and crypto space. Pretty much when it comes to the traditional equities market, I'm just a big I'm a big like buy and hold guy. I'm
Yes.
I'm in it for the long term. I don't really do like short term stuff there. Like so, but honestly, like I feel pretty good about most of my portfolio. So I'm here to like weather the downturns and the like. So I'll be honest, I haven't been following the traditional markets as closely, given all of the excitement and market boom that we've been experiencing in the NFT space.
Yeah.
But it seems like things have been riding high for a while. So like corrections are a natural part of market cycles.
Well, you're one of the smart ones who've taken emotions out of the game and focused on the right thing. So good for you.
Trying.
Good for you. Good for you. Apple has fallen from first to third on the list of top selling smartphones in China. Obviously, they're still number one here in America, but this begs the question, can you envision a world where Androids take over here in the United States? Android phones, not Star Wars robots.
I mean, look, I could see it. I could see it. I'm an Apple user myself. I'm also an Apple stockholder. That's probably one of my largest holdings that I don't plan on touching for a while. So, but Google has done a good job of providing an affordable alternative. That's much for the more price conscious and the like. And so, I could see it. But it doesn't necessarily send like it doesn't like it's not like a sound the alarms moment for Apple or anything.
No, maybe one day. I do wonder if the security concerns that people are starting to have more and more, it seems like, with Google's oversight and all Apple has done to kind of condense everything and make it more privacy oriented. I wonder if that will have an effect down the road. I don't know. Something to think about.
Yeah, good. Yeah, privacy. I feel like just like in general, consumers are getting more savvy to privacy and concerns.
Americana Technologies has created the NFTA Universal Chip, which allows you to take any item you own and turn it into an NFT. So which physical possession of yours would you make for the coolest NFT?
Wow, that's a really, really great question. You know what? It's interesting. One of the reasons why I was like so into why NFTs kind of clicked for me originally is that my dad collects like rare music memorabilia, particularly the Beatles, and so he has definitely a few like pieces of like cool like vintage like Beatles memorabilia that I think would be epic as NFTs. In my own collection. Oh man, it's interesting. I'm that classic guy who has like tons of NFTs and like blank walls, as you can see behind me. So it's but I do have I do have a few like plaques that I got from because I was in the music industry prior to getting into NFTs. I founded Billboard's dance electronic music brand. Did that whole rise with a lot of artists like Marshmello, like the Chainsmokers, like Kygo, and I've those are friends of mine who I really was able to like kind of give support to at a critical time, and so I do have some like plaques to kind of commemorate that.
Right.
That would be kind of cool to see those like immortalized on the blockchain. But I could never sell them because it's just like that's like it's sentimental. But
no, it has personal value to you. Yeah,
yeah.
I like that. Yes, things that like because like I'm thinking like the space you were in and those memorable moments or those pieces that spark a memory, right? To me, it comes back to like a game ball or something like that, where it marks a memory, a one-of-one time in your life where something happened and it represents more than just, that physical aspect of what it is.
Exactly. And
which
it's cool
NFTs
too
have the power
that,
to value,
Yeah, and like it's cool to know too, like it's like on the blockchain forever. If my apartment burns down, like I'm saying, like God forbid, like there's still a record of that, or it's still there. I could still hang it in my metaverse gallery at least.
Good call. Well, speaking of Google has announced that they will make $100,000 worth of tech training courses available to every U.S. business. So if you had the time, energy, and money, what courses would you like to take that potentially Google would offer?
Ooh, that's really interesting. I'm so busy with everything NFT now these days. I don't know that I'd even be able to carve out time. But honestly, I would like to see more, just in general, and not just for myself, but more educational resources like that around the crypto space, the blockchain space, like very, what's the word? utility oriented in terms of like really helping people navigate the what we're doing, and that's something actually we're doing at NFT Now as well. We have a ton of guides and resources and the like, but I just think it's a very, like, right now the UX is not easy. It's not an easy space to navigate, especially if you're not super crypto savvy. And so like, rather than just assuming that like people have to like figure this out on their own, I'd love to see some of these. I'd love to see like more heavy hitters getting into the education space there.
I like that. Well, speaking of that, I want to get into the meat of this conversation. Can you give us the simplest definition of what an NFT is?
Absolutely. So, and I love doing this because it's, I recognize just how like mystifying it can be, right?
Right.
Because honestly, like, 2 years ago, I didn't know what an NFT was. I was in crypto and I had been like dabbling in crypto, but like, there's a learning curve, and even people who have been in crypto, there's a learning curve for them too. So the way I always define it is like NFT, straight up non-fungible token. Like, what does that mean? So let's just like talk about fungibility really quick. Fungibility just means like it's the difference between like identical copies of something or something that's like truly unique. So a great example to give is like the US dollar. Like the US dollar is fungible. So like, if we were hanging, up in upstate New York, and like, Matt, you needed to buy a hot dog or something at the game, and like you needed to borrow it like $1 from me. I pull out my wallet. You're probably not going to be like, I want that dollar, right? You don't really care which dollar
Correct.
I give you, because they're all pretty much the same, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so the dollar's fungible. Same with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they're all fungible, which means they're pretty much interchangeable. But let's say that like we roll to the stadium, and I've got like a Warhol painting with me, and you've got a Basquiat painting with you. I don't know why we would be bringing these to the stadium, but for the sake of this example, like if we roll up with those and we take a look at them, like, Matt, we don't know what the value of those are related to each other just by looking at them, right?
Correct.
Like we have to weigh those on a ton of different factors. Like we need to know the history, we need to know the provenance, we need to know the cultural relevance, all that. An NFT is like the digital version of that. So it's
Correct.
Non-fungible. It's a unique token on the blockchain that cannot be interchanged necessarily with any other. And we as a society have to figure out its value and its worth based on the same factors that we often do for things like this. And the other great example I give to help people understand this is the example of baseball cards. Because longer than you or I have been alive, Matt, like our society has accepted that rare baseball cards have value, right?
Yep.
Vintage baseball cards have value as collectibles. And so there's a great example of this rookie Mickey Mantle card from the 1950s, which cost less than 5 cents to make and sold for $5.2 million, I believe, last year.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, why was that? It wasn't about that piece of cardstock, that physical piece of cardstock, which cost less than a nickel to make. It was about what it represents, which is rarity, scarcity,
Yep.
cultural relevance, history, fandom, which is critical, as you know. And so, it's similar. It's a similar thing with NFTs. NFTs are the digital version of that. And so we kind of, as a society, have to figure out what they're worth based on these similar factors. And what's kind of cool too is with NFTs, you can transfer them pretty much instantaneously anywhere in the world.
Yep.
You don't need to worry about like stuffing them in your pocket and damaging them.
Nope.
And critically, and I think this is what's really exciting and important, because of a thing called smart contracts on the blockchain, you can actually program their exchange in a way such that the creators get to share in the value of secondary sales. So
Future
for example,
value.
it's often in future value, exactly. So it's actually industry standard for artists in the NFT space to get up to like 10%, sometimes even more, of secondary sales in perpetuity. So gone is the example of like these starving artists who like sell their painting for like $1,000, then see it resell, at Christie's for $1 million, and they don't see any piece of that.
Right.
In this case, they would receive $100,000 straight, via into their Ethereum wallet or whatever cryptocurrency wallet, and without having to rely on like centralized bodies or authorities or humans to figure it out. It would be automated. So that's one area where I think there's like it's really exciting about the potential for the technology.
We've seen a lot of celebrities getting into the NFT game. Eminem, Post Malone, Justin Bieber, Serena Williams, Shaq. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Is this exclusively a rich man's game or someone who only got into crypto early? I mean, how accessible are NFT investments for people with, not a lot of capital to just throw at JPEGs, huh?
Matt, it's a great question. And the answer is we're still very early with NFTs. And if you look at market penetration, it's estimated that there are less than 1 million people actually who are active like NFT traders these days, which is a tiny market penetration. There's huge potential for it to grow. One thing I will say is this: you look at some of the really successful projects like Bored Ape Yacht Club, like Doodle, some of these big ones that a lot of the celebrities you mentioned have collected. A lot of those a year ago launched at quite affordable prices. When you could have minted, for example, in May of last year, you could have minted Bored Ape Yacht Club for I believe it was 0.08 ETH, which was around $200 at the time. And it was not and the mint was open to the public. It wasn't like a crazy whitelist situation. It was open for multiple days. It didn't sell out immediately. It was one of those things. It was a different time in the NFT space, but a lot of people got in who weren't rich, who weren't necessarily early in crypto and the like. And now, obviously, that has appreciated really considerably. The last I checked, the Bored Ape floor was hovering around 120 ETH, which is approaching 300K.
Yeah.
So that's a really sizable ROI and return there. Again, remember, Bored Ape Yacht Club is a bit of the exception versus the rule. It's the most successful project, arguably, in the NFT space. But again, a lot of these projects like Doodles, Cool Cats, etc., Azuki, minted at pretty affordable prices. So what I always say is this: if you're new to the space, you don't need the first car you buy usually isn't a Lamborghini, right?
Right.
If you're getting started, it's good to start with cheaper, more affordable projects that you think have potential, that you think have that room to grow, versus necessarily having to only play at the big leagues. I mean, you don't necessarily start as a starting quarterback in the NFL, right? You got to
takes time.
You got to get there. Exactly. It takes time, and actually it's good because you need to also learn how the markets work, and the best way to learn how the markets work is to participate in them and to trade and you're gonna take some L's, you'll have some W's, and it's better to learn using money that you can afford to lose. I always say, by the way, and this is really critical and important to get across, the NFT space is incredibly volatile. The markets rise and fall quite quickly. Things move very fast. I always say weeks are months and months are years in the NFT space. Please, if you are thinking about investing in NFTs, do not invest any more than you can afford to lose.
Correct.
Be very, very wise and smart with your risk management. But there is a lot of potential if you make the right investments and you get behind the right projects. And so while you do see these big celebrities, aping into these very, very expensive NFTs, that doesn't mean that you can't be successful in the space by starting at a smaller level.
Correct.
In fact, when I look at my own portfolio, most of the most valuable NFTs that I now own, I purchased quite cheap for less than 1 ETH at the time. And again, one thing to remember, when I always say this, when I bought Bitcoin back in 2013, I thought I was late. Because the chart was the same size then. It looked the same. It looked like I could have bought it here, and it was all the way up here now. And
that's just a little blip, though, now on the chart.
Exactly. It's just a little blip. It's just a little blip when you zoom out. And so it's very important to apply the same wide-angle lens to the NFT space. We're still in the very early innings, and so there are going to be tons of opportunities that come at you, which is why I always say too, you shouldn't don't FOMO, no regrets necessarily. Learn from mistakes, but always be looking forward, because if you're too focused on the past, you'll miss tons of opportunities that are coming down the road. There are a lot of people who were too late for Bored Ape Yacht Club, but they did very well with Azuki, or they did very well with with Moonbirds or like some of the other projects that have recently popped off. So it's a long-winded answer to an important question, which is it is not too late to get involved. You do not need to get involved with a ton of money. I've seen some really incredible stories of people who have gotten involved with a very small amount of money, but they pick the right projects.
Because that's the hard part, though, is picking the right ones. Obviously, in hindsight, It's easy to say that you were a savant and knew exactly what was coming. But I mean, do you have a spray and pray? Because there's thousands and thousands of projects, something new every day. It seems like. Are you just kind of like a venture capitalist kind of thought, where you're just kind of hoping one hits and you have a unicorn? Or are you kind of methodically following, the artists or the projects or the communities and, picking with, precision?
Matt, it's a great question. So I'll say this, I actually have kind of a framework into how like 4 factors I think about when I'm looking at which NFT projects to invest in. And those 4 factors are artistry, community, history, and utility. And I'll tell you quickly how I think about them. With artistry, if you're looking in the art world, like in the crypto art space, obviously that's going to be a longer term investments, much less liquidity, necessarily market volume. But if you find the next Picasso or the like, that's obviously going to be really a windfall. And there are some incredible artists that are making that are really like kind of charting this new chapter in art history. So some artists, if you see something that catches your eye, like artistry, that can be enough of a reason. There's an artist named Fuocious, who I've been an early supporter of, who just became the youngest artist to ever have a solo exhibition at Christie's. And he's got an amazing story. And honestly, when I first came across his work back in February of 2021, he hadn't blown up yet or anything. It was his artistry that caught my eye, and so that's one factor. And even if you look at some of these profile picture projects, which I consider more collectible than even necessarily art, but they have something that appeals to them. If you look at Doodles, Doodles is really aesthetically pleasing. It's great, family friendly IP. The Bored Ape Yacht Club, has a bit of an interesting kind of swag to it, the art on it.
Because your ape, it's a blue ape with a fez hat, and it's got a party favor in its mouth. Were those specific attributes important to you, or did you just kind of grab whatever was available? Well, I guess you minted it, so.
It's a funny story. Actually, funny enough, I actually didn't mint it. I was traveling. I was in Miami at the time. It was one of the few weekends that I was not plugged into my computer on OpenSea. And I actually I was out out about in Miami that weekend. I actually missed the Bored Apes mint. But a very good friend of mine named Illustrator, who's an amazing collector and community builder in the space, he actually minted a bunch of them. And in the early days, we were chatting about Bored Apes, and he was like, "Oh, do you want one?" And I was like, "I mean, sure, yeah,
why not?"
Cool. And again, I was because they were at that point, they had some buzz, it was cool, but they weren't worth a ridiculous amount. Then I was just honestly, yeah, if I see one I like, you know what I mean? And so I actually picked that one out of the ones that he had minted because it appealed to me, because it reminded me kind of as a degenerate DJ ape with and I wear a lot of leather jackets. That's kind of my thing. And it just had the party horn and all that. And of course now it's an absolutely ridiculous gift. Quite
that's
the nicest gift anyone's ever given me.
Yeah.
And you love to see it. But again, aesthetics matter. And I do actually say, I do tell people if you're thinking about investing a significant amount of money in an NFT that's going to be your profile picture, it's one of those, make sure you love it. Even if one is if they're on a similar tier, even if one's technically a little bit rarer, go with one you love, go with one that you're excited about, that's at a certain tier, they're pretty much the same. So go with one that really speaks to you. Because at the end of the day, part of the PFP craze that we've seen is this, it's about digital identity.
Yes.
For the first, we've always been doing digital identity from the days of AIM and and MySpace and all that.
Yep.
But what's amazing is we can actually own our digital identities now. And so that brings me to community, because now that people have this sense of ownership, you can build communities around these projects. Owning a Bored Ape is more than just a JPEG of an ape. It's actually a membership pass to this club. And they do events. They have there's a very active community built around it. One of the critical reasons why the Bored Ape project took off was that they actually offer commercial rights to their holders. So with my ape, I could go print merch of him. I could sign his IP. I could sign a licensing deal with his IP, and I actually could see that the financial benefit from that. And so what's interesting is you have this empowered group of like people who own these apes and are starting to like do all these interesting business things. And at the end of the day, it's also like just helping raise the profile of the project. And so community is key. Like, so the Bored Ape like community is a great example of one. It's just like a diehard community. You go in the Discord, it's incredibly active. You see people are championing it on social media. They're following each other, all that. Especially when you look at collectible projects like PFPs and the like, community is one of the most important, if not the most important factors. When I was looking at, for example, projects like World of Women and Cool Cats that I bought into very early, it was seeing how their communities were coming together that really sold me on those purchases. I remember going in the Cool Cats town hall and like hearing the founders speak, seeing just like the numbers and the engagement and the excitement. And I was like, okay, this is real. Like, you can't fake that, There's none of the smoke and mirrors that you see in like
community
the Web2
is powerful.
stuff. And so
it is.
Community is powerful. And then utility is key. Utility is key, especially if we're talking about projects. I think one thing to make important is like, if you're an artist who's just making art and that's what you're doing and you're not trying to like build a project around it like that, like Artistry can be the utility. Like, I don't want to force artists to like add utility or feel like they need to do things that are not in their wheelhouse. That said, when people are buying into some of these community-based projects, utility is a critical thing. So like, for example, the fact that I owned a Bored Ape meant that I could then go to Ape Fest during NFT NYC, which was a big festival. I actually DJ'd there, so
you already had access.
I was already in. Yeah, I was already in. But I can guarantee you, I was the least impressive name on the roster. Like, The Strokes played it, Lil Baby played it, Beck played it, Aziz Ansari was there. It was a really it was like just like a big festival type vibe, and it was totally free for people who owned apes and the like, and so people had access to that. And so like utility, you think about like these kind of real world utility, and then also like these like digital utility, like we were just talking about the Other Side drop. By owning an ape, you then received land in their new metaverse, Other Side. So those kind of things, we call them airdrops in the NFT space, probably from the crypto space too. It's like by owning something, you get rewarded. You get dropped another token or another NFT. There was the ApeCoin airdrop, that for people who are holding Bored Apes, that was just, it was an incredible gift, and like things like that. And so those looking for projects that are thinking about utility and how they continue to reward and provide a value to their holders is a good one. And then the last one that I want to talk about is history, because it may sound a little crazy, because this hasn't been around for that long. But if you believe, like I do, that we're at the birth of a new creative asset class, that we are opening a new chapter in the history of the internet, in the history of art, in the history of creative expression, and for the first time ever, we have provable digital ownership, there's huge opportunities to acquire assets that are going to have historical value in this window. And so like you think about it. And keep their value. So like, one of the I know I've spoken a lot about Bored Apes, but Bored Apes were actually inspired by a project called CryptoPunks. And CryptoPunks, launched in 2017. They were free to claim. So there was no financial calculus behind their launch. It was just an experiment, and back in like the early days of like the NFT space. And it was one of the first like, arguably the first like 10K generative avatar project that kind of gave way, that kind of led to this.
Stage.
It was the archetype.
Yeah.
It set the stage. And so like, to me, CryptoPunks are like, owning a CryptoPunk is like owning a piece of internet history. Like, they're going to be in museums, if you think about it down the line. And so like, I'm a big believer in historical NFTs, like NFTs that are, like some of the earliest ones on the blockchain, ones that have real significance. And if you think about it, like, one thing I also think about is like scarcity is the name of the game, obviously, and you think about in the markets. And so there are more NFTs now that get minted or launched like daily in the NFT space than probably like the totality of like 2014 to 2019, right? And so as we continue to go forward, those projects that came before are going to become an increasingly small sliver of that pie. And I do think that a lot of those are going to end up having real historical value. So that's something also to think about when thinking about NFTs. With historical NFTs, it's more of a long-term hold game than like a short-term, like, you know, market volume game. But ultimately, I think they're a bit more sustainable.
So artistry, community, utility, history.
Yeah.
Those are four pillars to kind of hang your hat on and evaluating, I guess, what projects to dive into. That's awesome. What do you think is the biggest? Well, I was going to ask the biggest misconception with NFTs, because again, people hear that word thrown around all the time, or they see a profile pic. But what do you think it is?
Yeah. I think there's a couple. One I want to hit on is that a lot of people don't realize, like, a lot of people think it's just like, it's more than just a JPEG, right? Like, it's about what it represents. We talked about it in like in the context of baseball cards and all that. Like, you know, an NFT can be anything. It's you know, we've seen digital art and collectibles take off, but like we're also seeing really incredible, incredible growth in photography NFTs, music NFTs, the television film space. Thinking about it even in terms of like documentation, like real estate deeds, things like that.
Seems like a perfect application.
Exactly. And so I actually think that like what gets a lot of the headlines is actually just like barely scratching the surface of what NFTs are. And look, I understand it because, you know, I come from the media world. I know what gets clicks. I know what gets attention. And so, you know, these more like niche or less sexy use cases aren't going to compete with, you know, Beeple selling an NFT for $69 million, right? But what really excites me about the space is how like I always say, like NFTs are changing lives every day. So if you think about it, like in the digital art world, it's allowed digital artists to actually have a collector base. So digital artists prior to NFTs, they pretty much like, you know, had to rely on client work, in which they got paid peanuts for.
Right.
And like maybe they would sell a print here and two. Like digital artists weren't taken seriously.
Or their work could get copy and pasted across the web.
Yeah. There was no way to prove digital ownership.
Yeah.
And so now that there is, you're seeing digital artists finally get their due. You're seeing these incredible artists like able to make a living off their own creative vision instead of just client work. I get more excited, to be honest, when I see that like an artist like quit their day job to focus on art, or like is now able to like
pursue their passion.
Pursue their passion. That excites me even more than like big 7-figure sales or whatever, because like that's leading to like a sea change, a cultural sea change. One thing that we're seeing, like, you know, I come from the music industry. The music industry is so lopsided against musicians and artists. It's not even funny. Like, you know, like
especially with streaming and how that's changed everything, huh?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like traditional major label deals, like you would sign away 80% of like your ownership and like your royalties to like get a, you know, one-time like, you know, advance that you then have to pay back before you get to see any of that upside. And meanwhile, like you're having to do it through merch and touring because streaming services pay less than a penny per stream. And it's like, you know, it's crazy because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm like, people are surprised to see music NFTs like having a market. I'm like, I'm surprised that we ever accepted that music was worth like less than a penny per stream.
Right.
Like, it's ridiculous. Yeah, like when I grew up, we were paying what, like $10, $15 for a one CD, right?
99 cents a lot of on that, iTunes.
Exactly.
Per song.
And so like that value keeps that value proposition is and it's artists are getting the shafted in that. And so what's amazing, what we're seeing in the NFT space, for example, is we've seen artists do crowd funds for their projects with NFTs. So they're like, hey, like by owning this NFT, you're also going to be able to own like a percentage of the royalties, but it's a much more reasonable percentage than what the major labels were taking.
Yeah.
And they're doing it by putting the ownership in the hands of their community, their fans who actually believe in them, versus a major label that like, you know, might shelve their work or you know, is dictated by like profit margins and all that. And the fact that you're able to then also turn your fans into ambassadors, into shareholders, into stakeholders is really powerful. Blau, the DJ producer, who's been the pioneer in music NFTs and who also is the one who introduced me to NFTs, so I owe him a thank you. He actually started a company called Royal that is doing just that and allowing
royalties for artists?
Fans to. Yeah, like fans can buy NFTs, music NFTs through Royal, and then they can actually share in the streaming royalties, in the mechanical royalties,
cool.
a certain percentage of that. And they've even had like big artists like Nas and Diplo have released on it, which is really cool. So we'd love to see that. And so what I'm getting at too, I guess, is like one of the biggest misconceptions is like that it's just like a JPEG or it's just like a, or that it's
Much
like
deeper.
It's not real or whatever. It's much deeper, and it creates this, one of the most underrated and least understood things about NFTs is the fact that they create this amazing direct connection between you and your fans. So one of the things I often talk about, there's an amazing treatise called 1,000 True Fans that Kevin Kelly wrote. And Kevin Kelly, what he argues in this treatise is that as a creative, like you actually don't need millions of fans to have a successful career as a creative in theory. Like, I'm not talking like Drake, Justin Bieber level. I'm talking like you can put food on the table, like you're comfortable, all that. And if you think about it, like that was the original promise of the internet, was that we would be able to like anywhere in the world, like we'd be able to reach, like no matter what your interest is, no matter how niche it is or whatever, if you could find like the people around the world who believe in it and want to support you,
have a
like
market,
you can make a sustainable. You have got a market, exactly. And so the issue is like in Web 2, as we call like the current like state of things, big centralized platforms got in the way of that. So all of a sudden, like you got the Instagrams, the Facebooks, the Spotifys, et cetera. Like you got like all of a sudden they're getting in the way. They're controlling the point of exchange. They're forcing creators like to basically provide their content for free in a likes and comments based economy to build audience as a means to the end of monetizing it as a middleman for brands. And and what they're doing is they're even forcing you as a creator to pay them to reach even a fraction of your following, which is ridiculous.
Nuts.
And it's ads and algorithms getting in the way of that original promise of the internet. And that's one of the reasons why they always say, like a lot of people say in music, and it goes beyond music, there's like no middle class in music. Either you're like star level, like doing it, or you're struggling to get by. And so what's amazing is with NFTs, you can create this direct connection from fan to creators to community members, where you're no longer at the mercy of an algorithm, where you can directly connect with and directly monetize with your community. I always say in Web3, you actually, rather than building audience is aware that you exist, but community, they want to see you win. They have a stake in you. They want to, and so like with community, you're building community as an end in itself, and you can monetize that community directly. So, for example, if you're a death metal band in Arkansas, but you find 1,000 people like around the world who like just want to rock out, who vibe with that vibe, and let's say you put up a music NFT for $100, which is a pretty reasonable price point for an NFT. Okay. That's $100,000 in revenue.
There you go.
That's $100,000 in revenue. And when I say these true fans, I mean people who are going to buy what you put down. Like they're going to buy the ticket, they're going to take the ride, they're going to buy the merch, they're going to show up to the show, etc. And they're all in. And so if you think about it, $100,000 in revenue is a lot more than most of my indie musician friends have ever seen from the streaming services.
Really?
And so super transformative when you think about it.
It's bringing true ownership back to the creators and giving them what they deserve. Yeah.
Exactly. And one last point I'll say on that is I can't stress enough the importance of creating this ongoing bond. So I always say, like, if you're doing it right, an NFT drop, an NFT sale is a beginning. It's not an end.
Correct.
The work starts here because
it's almost like a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, but it ends up being a good thing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what's amazing is as I mentioned, Blau got me into NFTs, and when he was first explaining them to me, one thing he told me was like, look, he's like, if let's say I have a show in like Mexico City or whatever, or I'm going on tour, he's like, I know, and let's say I'm in Mexico City, like I know that I have fans in Mexico City. Spotify tells me I get this many tens of thousands or 100,000s of streams each month, but I can't reach them. I don't know who they are. Spotify has that data. I don't have that data. Whereas when you have, let's say, NFTs that are being held, you can take what's called a snapshot, and in an instant you can see every single wallet that's holding your NFT, and you can reward them. You could send them things. You could send them an NFT that has all of your tour details. You could send them. You could also reward them. You can say, hey, you own my NFT, that gets you VIP meet and greet, like backstage pass, depending on the tiers. That's incredibly powerful. And you think about, like, you look at like what guys like Gary Vee have done. Gary Vee understood that with VeeFriends, like he got like a bunch of heat because it was like his doodles, but I was like, you're missing the point. Like it's not about the art. Yeah. It's not about the art. It's about access to him.
Yep.
Because he has a crazy fan base
the
that
conference
like love
and everything.
the conference, FaceTime Flamingo or whatever it is, like allows you to FaceTime with him, like things like that. Like he recognized that there's a market for his time and for the attention and that access, and he gave them actually like what they wanted, which was a piece of him, and so like,
love that.
Like exactly. So like, it's really interesting when you think about NFTs. Like the biggest misconception is like a lot of people don't realize how much deeper it goes.
I love that answer. But what I really want to know, okay, is there a football league in the metaverse, and are any of the teams looking for a quarterback? I'm just asking for a friend here.
Let's go. So what's funny is I've been seeing a number of like NFT projects and even like DAOs coming together around like soccer teams, like Europe, like football as they call it outside of the States.
Right.
More so, like I've seen a bit of that. Obviously, like there's what's it called? Like it's the NFL's equivalent to NBA Top Shot that Dapper Labs is putting together.
Correct.
With like the moments.
Yep.
I know that's launching. But yeah, I don't know. I think the Buffalo Bills should be the first team in the metaverse.
I think we should stake claim to the first stadium, the first season tickets, and then have a virtual. Because I know they already do kind of have. I mean, video games and NFTs. There's a natural fit to, like you said, like the ownership and then the tokenization or utility of whether that's a skin or a player in a game or equipment, and there's ownership to that, whether that's fan driven or I don't know, something to think about. But
totally,
I'm available for any metaverse owners. Here we go. All right,
let's go.
I want to move on to a little game, little variety. Test your knowledge on OpenSea and Mark Cuban. He's one of the more prolific celebrity investors in NFTs, and according to OpenSea, he owns about 1,500 of them. All right, so I'm going to describe an NFT, and you got to tell me whether it's a real one that Mark Cuban owns or if it's fake. All right, ready?
Okay, this is going to be difficult.
It is going to be difficult, but we'll see where you got. Number one, a GIF of Steve Harvey throwing an imaginary shoe. Does Mark Cuban own that NFT?
This sounds real. This sounds like something he owns.
That is real. Yes. Your intuition is already paying off. 1 of 1. Like it. Number 2.
Wow.
A cartoon shark with its face covered in blood, carrying a Tommy gun and a samurai sword. Does Mark Cuban own that?
Ooh. This sounds like it would be like perfect for Shark Tank. It almost sounds too perfect to be true, so I'm gonna go with saying that it's a fake one.
The answer is yes. He owns an NFT of a shark.
You're right. It was too specific.
Way too specific, but it exists. It's on OpenSea, and Mark Cuban owns it. Wow.
Not surprised.
All right, here we go. Number 3, a portrait of Serena Williams. Straight up, does Mark Cuban own that NFT?
Well, now I'm like, psyching myself out.
Now it's too simple.
So I feel like this one has to be false.
And that is true. He does. He owns a portrait of Serena Williams.
I should just know that everything's an NFT at this point.
Everything's an NFT. A giant cartoon chicken wearing a Luka Doncic jersey. Does Mark Cuban own that?
That sounds very Mark Cuban.
It does sound very Mark Cuban, but that is false.
But yeah.
There are so many projects and stuff going on.
The true streak was going to.
Anything,
you know what? Like,
can happen.
All of these. You know what I mean? And honestly, because we now spoke about it on a podcast, it'll probably be made into an NFT.
It will.
And probably sent to his wallet.
Oh gosh, a giant cartoon chicken wearing a Luka jersey. Goodness, what are we getting to? All right, number 5, a photo of a cat wearing a tie with the text, "I'm gonna need you to come in on Catterday." Does Mark Cuban own that NFT?
I feel like he must. Like, that also sounds pretty specific.
Yes, he does. That is a real NFT, and Mark Cuban owns it.
Love it.
Oh, I wonder what his decision process was when buying that. Like, what?
Yeah.
Just comical.
I will say, people do like. Also, when you're a notable figure in the NFT space and people find your wallet, sometimes people just send you NFTs.
That's true.
So
That's true.
But what you can do is one of the great things about NFTs is there's provenance, and it's all transparent and public and immutable on the blockchain. You can't edit it, you can't tamper with it. Nobody can say it's fake or it's real, if it's not. And you can actually go back and see, was this something that Mark Cuban bought, or was this something that just got sent to his wallet?
We might have to verify the cat wearing a tie NFT.
At the end of the day, it's a real NFT that Mark Cuban now owns. So.
That's true. All right, last one. Does Mark Cuban own a GIF of himself saying, "And for those reasons, I'm out," on Shark Tank? Does he own that NFT?
I mean, I'm just gonna go with yes on this one. Like that just seems like
I would have for sure thought
way.
He would wear that, including like a T-shirt, but unfortunately he does not.
That one, yeah.
But now it's your job to go make one and put it in his wallet, and it's gonna show up, and it will be real one day.
There it is. Knowing the NFT space, like there's someone who's gonna do it much quicker than me.
That's true. The space is always changing, always something going on. But Medved, thank you, dude, for sharing your knowledge, really explaining. That was, I would say, in layman's terms, you provided a lot of great analogies, examples of NFTs, of use cases, breaking down really the whole world of NFTs. I appreciate that. Thanks so much, man.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me. And like I always say, like there's no dumb questions in NFTs, Web3. That's why we started NFT Now. We're here to it really just help drive mainstream adoption. Got lots of guides, resources, so please check it out. NFTnow.com, NFT Now on socials. We're here to help.
Boom. If you guys enjoyed the show, please remember to rate and leave a review or subscribe if you haven't already so that you never miss an episode. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Matt Barkley, and this has been Making Bread.